Every action you take, every decision you make, is not as conscious as you think. Right now, unseen loops in your brain are running your life. Loops that decide what you eat, how you spend your time, and whether you succeed or fail. Today, you will discover these hidden cycles. You will learn how to break the ones that hold you back and create unstoppable patterns that make focus, discipline, and progress inevitable. If you listen closely and act deliberately, your life will never be the same. This is the habit loop that controls your life. Chapter 1. Stop being a passenger in your own life. You are not in control. Most of your day is dictated by routines you never consciously chose. Every morning, every task, every reaction. These are predetermined loops your brain repeats automatically. If you think you're making decisions, you are mistaken. That is the first principle you must accept. You are a passenger. That is the truth. Your habits run on autopilot. Small routines accumulate silently. They define your energy. They define your focus. They define your outcomes. The average person does not notice. They allow their life to unfold unconsciously. They respond instead of act. They drift. You cannot drift. Not if you intend to build focus, discipline, and purpose. Awareness is the first rule of mastery. If you're not aware, you're not in control. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. Notice what you do automatically. Notice what you reach for without thinking. Notice where your attention goes when you're not directing it. That is the first task. Track your routines. Write them down. Map your day from the moment you wake to the moment you sleep. Include the small actions, the coffee you drink while scrolling your phone, the 15 minutes of distraction in the bathroom, the patterns that seem inconsequential. None are inconsequential. That is the second principle. Everything compounds. Everything matters. Here is a real-world example. A CEO of a mid-sized technology company discovered she was losing 4 hours of productive work each day. She assumed she was efficient. She was not. She tracked her mornings. She realized she checked email immediately upon waking, answered messages, scrolled social media, and repeated the pattern for an hour. She did this every day. That time was wasted. Autopilot ruled. She was a passenger in her own life. She implemented one system. She designed her morning intentionally. She began her day with a fixed ritual. 30 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of focused writing, 10 minutes reviewing priorities. No phone, no email. She structured her environment to reinforce discipline. The result? 4 additional hours of productive work daily. Months later, the change had compounded. Projects completed. Decisions made with clarity. Energy preserved. She took control. You can do the same. You have a choice. You have a choice. Most people argue with this. They say they cannot change. They say they are too busy. That is not true. Systems override excuses. Systems enforce discipline. That is the third principle. Your brain will follow structure. It will not follow vague intention. It will not follow hope. It will follow rules. Your task is to give it rules. You don't need their permission. You don't need approval. You don't need a motivational speech. You need design. Identify the loops you follow. Map the trigger, routine, and reward. Morning coffee, trigger, alarm clock, routine, check phone, reward, dopamine from novelty. Do you want that reward? Or do you want control of your energy? Do you want mastery? Decide. That is the fourth rule. You do not get to ignore your loops. You do not get to pretend they do not exist. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. Once identified, replace them deliberately. This is not difficult. It requires consistency. It requires repetition. It requires structure. For every old loop, implement a new one. Not random. Not flexible. Fixed. Precise. Morning scrolling becomes 20 minutes of writing. Midday distractions become scheduled reflection. Evening television becomes intentional reading. Each loop reinforces the life you want. Each loop reinforces the person you want to be. This is not a suggestion. This is a command. You have a choice. Energy management is inseparable from habit management. Autopilot consumes your energy. Unnecessary decisions deplete your willpower. Small routines multiply their effect over time. A single wasted hour today is 7 wasted hours by next week. It compounds. That is the invisible cost of being a passenger. Every micro-action matters. Every small choice counts. You do not get to discount it. You do not get to defer responsibility. You have a choice. You have a choice. Reflection is non-negotiable. Each evening, review your day. Identify when autopilot dominated. Note when you acted intentionally. Ask yourself, which loops serve me? Which loops drain me? Replace. Adjust. Repeat. This is not optional. This is not theoretical. This is training. Discipline is built in the silent hours, in the mundane repetitions, in the invisible adjustments. That is the 5th principle. Repetition builds mastery. Repetition builds mastery. The environment is a tool. It can enslave you or liberate you. Do not underestimate its power. Remove cues that reinforce autopilot. Introduce cues that reinforce structure. Your desk, your devices, your workspace, your phone, your email, each can serve you or control you. This is simple, direct, and effective. You do not need permission. You do not need external validation. You need design, and design enforces control. That is the 6th principle. Do not confuse motion with progress. Many people act. They move. They feel busy. They are passengers. They follow loops. They chase small rewards. You do not have that luxury. Focus, discipline, purpose. These require you to act consciously. Every action must be intentional. Every choice must be deliberate. That is not a suggestion. That is a fact. You have a choice. You have a choice. Now apply it immediately. Begin today. Track your habits. Map your loops. Replace at least one autopilot routine with a deliberate, structured action. Measure. Reinforce. Repeat. That action compounds. It sets precedent. It establishes authority over yourself. Every loop you master is a declaration. You are no longer a passenger. You are the driver. You do not need anyone's permission. You do not need motivation. You need design. You need discipline. You need structure. If you do this, you will notice change. Your energy will increase. Your focus will sharpen. Your day will expand. You will begin to act instead of react. You will begin to live intentionally. You will begin to master yourself. That is the consequence of awareness. That is the consequence of design. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. We conclude this chapter with one firm statement. You are not a passenger. You have been operating on autopilot. You have identified that. You have observed that. You have begun the process of design. Now, you will continue. You will take this awareness and implement structure. You will identify loops. You will replace routines. You will enforce discipline. That is the only way forward. That is the only way forward. Next, we will examine the hidden triggers you ignore every day. The triggers you cannot see dictate your behavior silently. You will learn to expose them. You will learn to take control of them. You will learn to direct your life intentionally, without reliance on chance, mood, or willpower. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Awareness alone is not enough. You must act. Chapter 2. The hidden triggers you ignore every day. Habits do not appear spontaneously. They begin with triggers, small cues, invisible signals your brain registers without your permission. An emotion, a location, a sound, a notification. These triggers dictate your actions before your mind has a chance to intervene. If you fail to recognize them, you are under control. You are not the decision maker. That is the first principle of triggers. Most people ignore them. They wake up, check their phone, and think it is a choice. It is not. The notification, the vibration, the red dot, all these cues have primed a behavior loop. Your attention is hijacked. Your morning, your energy, your focus consumed. You believe you are in control. You are not. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. Identify the trigger. Do not ignore it. Track it. Name it. Recognize it. Here is an example. A man wakes up at 6:30 a.m. He reaches for his phone before even leaving the bed. The alarm stops. His hand moves automatically. Instagram, news feed, messages. 20 minutes vanish. His energy is depleted. His priorities are delayed. His focus is compromised. All before he has performed a single intentional act. The trigger was simple. The phone. The routine was automatic scrolling. The reward was novelty. Each day, the cycle reinforced itself. He was a passenger. You have a choice. You can leave it unchecked. You can accept the hijacking, or you can intervene. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Change the trigger, change the outcome. That is the rule. Triggers determine behavior. Control the trigger. Control the behavior. Control the outcome. Triggers are not limited to technology. A location can prime a habit. The office desk primes distraction if cluttered. The kitchen primes overeating if snacks are visible. A specific song primes procrastination if associated with past avoidance. Emotional states act as triggers too. Boredom, anxiety, stress, even mild irritation can activate routines you do not intend. Recognize the trigger. Name it. Track it. That is the foundation. Awareness alone is not sufficient. You must intervene. You must act. To expose triggers, you must observe. Begin with a single habit. Choose one routine you wish to change. For example, morning scrolling. Record when it happens, what preceded it, and what followed. Identify the cue. Was it the phone, the bed, the silence, the first sip of coffee? Map it fully. This is your system. You do not guess. You measure. You record. You observe. That is the discipline. That is the structure. Once identified, you replace or remove the trigger. Remove the phone from the bedroom. Place it across the room. Charge it outside the bedroom. The cue no longer triggers the routine automatically. Alternatively, replace the trigger with an intentional action. When you wake, instead of reaching for the phone, perform 10 minutes of stretching or journal or review priorities. You set the cue. You design the loop. You control the outcome. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Triggers accumulate silently. They form a network of unseen forces guiding your life. Consider the commute. Your brain associates the drive with podcasts, coffee stops, or fast food outlets. Those associations become cues. They dictate decisions without reflection. You must identify them. Intervene. Replace them. This is not optional. It is necessary. Every trigger you ignore compounds loss. Every trigger you master compounds gain. You have a choice. You have a choice. Emotions are the most insidious triggers. Anxiety primes scrolling. Stress primes snacking. Loneliness primes distraction. You cannot eliminate emotions. That is impossible. But you can recognize their cueing power. When a feeling arises, you implement a rule. Pause. Reflect. Act deliberately. Replace the automatic routine with a designed alternative. That is your discipline. That is your structure. You do not need anyone's permission. You do not need inspiration. You need rules. Triggers are predictable. They are programmable. They respond to structure. You must become the observer. Map your environment. Map your emotional states. Map your recurring contexts. Identify the ones that activate undesired behavior. Remove them. Replace them. This is not theory. It is engineering. You are designing a mental operating system. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Do not underestimate the small cues. A notification sound, a blinking light, a specific chair, a cup of coffee. These are the signals that govern your behavior. Small triggers compound into large patterns. They define energy, focus, and output. You cannot afford to ignore them. That is the principle. Every trigger mastered strengthens control. Every trigger ignored strengthens autopilot. That is the choice. Implement systems to expose triggers consistently. Daily reflection, journaling, tracking. Ask, what prompted this action? Was it conscious? Was it intentional? If not, redesign the cue. Repeat. Reinforce. Repeat. Consistency is the mechanism of mastery. Repetition is the engine. You cannot skip this step. You cannot delegate it. It is your responsibility. You have a choice. You have a choice. Your environment is an extension of your discipline. Position cues that reinforce structure. Remove cues that reinforce distraction. The coffee mug can be moved. The chair can be positioned elsewhere. The devices can be removed. The app notifications can be disabled. These are not suggestions. They are interventions. They enforce your will. They enforce your rules. They enforce your outcomes. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Change the trigger, change the outcome. By mastering triggers, you regain control of your behavior loops. You dictate your routines. You reclaim energy. You sharpen focus. You make progress unavoidable. You're no longer a passenger. You're the driver. You do not need anyone's permission. You do not need motivation. You do not rely on willpower alone. You rely on systems. You rely on rules. You rely on conscious design. That is the principle. That is the discipline. Conclude this chapter with one non-negotiable rule. You will identify every trigger that governs a routine you wish to change. You will expose it. You will map it. You will intervene. You will replace it or remove it. You will act deliberately. That is the only path to control. That is the only path to mastery. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Change the trigger, change the outcome. Awareness alone is insufficient. Action is mandatory. Action is compulsory. Next, we will examine the habit loop itself, the cue, routine, reward cycle, and how it reinforces behavior automatically. You will learn the mechanics. You will see how loops form. You will learn how to disrupt undesired patterns systematically. Awareness of triggers is necessary. Understanding loops is essential. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 3. Cracking the cue routine reward cycle. Every habit follows a pattern you may not recognize, but one that governs your behavior. This pattern is simple. It is predictable. It is the foundation of both your successes and your failures. The pattern is cue, routine, reward. Every loop follows this structure. Every loop reinforces itself through repetition. Understanding this is the first step toward control. The cue is the signal. It prompts the brain to act. It could be an object, a sound, an emotion, a time of day. The cue is neutral. The cue decides nothing. The cue decides nothing. It simply triggers a response. The routine is the behavior that follows the cue. The routine is action. The routine decides everything. The routine decides everything. This is where control exists. The reward is the consequence. It confirms the behavior. It solidifies the loop. Reward confirms it. Reward confirms it. Consider this example. A person wakes, sees their phone, and begins scrolling social media. The cue, the phone. The routine, scrolling. The reward, novelty, distraction, and dopamine. The brain registers, this is beneficial. Repeat. The loop reinforces itself. Day after day, hour after hour. This is automatic, silent, unnoticed, until control is lost. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. Now consider a deliberate replacement. The cue remains, the phone, but the routine is changed. Instead of scrolling, the person meditates for 5 minutes. The reward, calm, focus, and clarity. The brain begins to associate the cue with this positive outcome. The loop still exists, but it serves the person, not the autopilot. This is the system. This is the principle. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Repetition is the mechanism. Loops strengthen through frequency. Each time a routine follows a cue and produces a reward, the connection strengthens. Neural pathways are formed. The behavior becomes easier. It becomes automatic. This is how habits solidify. This is why mastery requires intentional repetition. Without it, control is impossible. You cannot rely on intention alone. You cannot rely on motivation. You must design the loop. You must act deliberately. You have a choice. You have a choice. The power of this understanding lies in substitution. Every undesired routine can be replaced. The cue remains constant. The reward remains desirable. Only the routine changes. That is all. That is enough. If you wish to stop mindless scrolling, identify the cue. Determine the reward. Replace the routine. Repeat consistently. This is not complicated. It is engineering. It is precision. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Repeat until automatic. Repeat until automatic. Systems enforce this naturally. Structure the environment to support the loop you desire. Remove cues that prime undesired routines. Introduce cues that prime desired routines. Place meditation prompts where scrolling occurs. Keep water visible on your desk if the routine is hydration. Use timers, alarms, reminders, tools that reinforce the new loop. The environment is not passive. It is your co-designer. It enforces discipline. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Do not underestimate small routines. Micro habits compound. 5 minutes of meditation each morning leads to enhanced focus throughout the day. 10 minutes of deliberate planning improves productivity over weeks. The brain registers consistency. Neural pathways strengthen. Automatic behavior shifts toward intentionality. Each small replacement accumulates. Momentum builds. That is the principle. That is the discipline. You have a choice. You have a choice. Habits can be destructive, even if seemingly harmless. Check social media during work. That 5-minute routine compounds into hours lost. Skip planning in the morning. That small omission compounds into missed opportunities. Consume caffeine and sugar mindlessly. That micro habit compounds into energy crashes and poor focus. Each loop matters. Every reward reinforces. Every routine accumulates. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. To engineer mastery, track your loops. Write them down. For each habit, record the cue, routine, and reward. Determine which routines serve your objectives and which sabotage them. Replace the destructive routines with structured alternatives that reinforce focus, energy, and discipline. Apply repetition without exception. Enforce consistency. Systems outweigh motivation. That is the rule. That is the system. You do not need anyone's permission. You do not need inspiration. You need design. You need repetition. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. The complexity of life will present multiple cues simultaneously. You will encounter overlapping loops. A notification may trigger scrolling while stress triggers snacking. You must prioritize. Identify which loops have the greatest impact. Target them first. Replace them. Reinforce the new routine. Measure the outcome. Confirm the reward. Adjust where necessary. Precision matters. Consistency matters. This is not theory. This is practice. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Failure to act is a decision. Each ignored loop compounds into loss of control. Autopilot governs. Energy is drained. Focus is scattered. Discipline is delayed. Do not ignore the loops in your life. Do not assume they are harmless. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. Master the loops. Replace the routines. Enforce the structure. That is the principle. That is the discipline. You have a choice. You have a choice. In conclusion, the habit loop is a machine. It is neutral. It will operate as programmed. You may allow autopilot to govern, or you may design it deliberately. Identify the cue. Replace the routine. Reinforce the reward. Repeat consistently. Track, measure, adjust. Systems enforce success. Repetition reinforces mastery. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Cue decides nothing. Routine decides everything. Reward confirms it. Next, we will examine the small wins that build momentum. You will learn why incremental progress compounds into unstoppable focus. You will learn how to implement micro habits with precision. You will see why mastery is built in repetition, not inspiration. Awareness and loop replacement are necessary, but without small wins, progress stalls. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 4. The small wins that build momentum. Progress is not made in leaps. It is made in increments. Tiny, deliberate actions repeated consistently. Small wins are the foundation of mastery. Ignore them, and you stall. Focus on them, and momentum becomes unstoppable. This is the principle. This is the rule. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Most people wait for motivation. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the perfect moment. That is a trap. The perfect moment does not exist. Motivation is unreliable. Consistency is reliable. Systems produce results. Micro habits create measurable progress. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Consider writing a book. Many believe it requires hours of work each day. Discipline must be constant. The reality is different. A person writes 50 words each morning. 50 words. That is all. At first, it seems insignificant, but repetition accumulates. 1 week, 350 words. 1 month, 1,500 words. 3 months, 4,500 words. 6 months, a completed draft. The process is not overwhelming. It is structured. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Momentum is built through consistency. One micro habit triggers another. One small action strengthens identity. You are a person who acts deliberately. You are a person who completes tasks. You are a person who wins in small, measurable ways. Identity reinforces behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. The feedback loop is inevitable. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. The principle applies to every domain. Physical fitness. Begin with a single push-up. Energy management. Begin with a 10-minute focus session. Financial discipline. Save a small amount consistently. Each small action compounds into measurable outcomes. The principle is universal. The principle is precise. Systems enforce it. Repetition compounds it. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Do not underestimate the cumulative effect of micro-habits. They feel minor initially. They feel inconsequential. The brain resists change. That is normal. Ignore resistance. Act anyway. Structure your environment to reinforce the habit. Place cues where they cannot be missed. Track progress visibly. Measure results. Adjust where necessary. This is engineering, not inspiration. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Psychology supports this approach. Success creates reinforcement. Each small win produces a reward. Dopamine confirms progress. The brain associates action with benefit. Over time, the association strengthens. The micro-habit becomes automatic. Motivation is no longer required. Willpower is less necessary. Systems enforce continuation. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Failure to implement small wins leads to stagnation. Many attempt grand gestures. They work tirelessly for a short period. They burn energy. They produce results temporarily. Then they collapse. Momentum is lost. Consistency disappears. Micro-habits prevent collapse. Small wins prevent stagnation. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Design your environment to favor small wins. Reduce friction. Make the first step inevitable. Place tools and cues in plain sight. Remove distractions. Automate initiation where possible. Begin with actions so small they cannot be refused. The brain accepts small steps. Resistance diminishes. Momentum builds naturally. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Accountability enhances effectiveness. Track each small win. Record it visually. Checklists, journals, digital trackers. The act of recording reinforces behavior. It provides feedback. It confirms progress. It strengthens the loop of habit formation. Systems enforce success. Micro-habits reinforce identity. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Commitment is essential. Choose one small habit. Begin immediately. Repeat daily. Measure results. Adjust. Reinforce. The process is simple. It is repetitive. It is deliberate. Do not overcomplicate. Overplanning delays action. Begin. Repeat. Reinforce. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Reflection enhances momentum. Weekly, review all micro-habits. Identify which produce results. Identify which fail. Adjust. Optimize. Remove obstacles. Reinforce facilitators. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. This practice ensures continuous growth. Continuous refinement multiplies results. Small actions accumulate. They become unstoppable. Energy management is strengthened by small wins. Completing small tasks produces confidence. Confidence fuels further action. The brain recognizes control. Autopilot loops are replaced by deliberate routines. Systems enforce this. Repetition solidifies it. Discipline emerges quietly, steadily, inexorably. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Do not mistake small wins for triviality. They're not trivial. They're the architecture of mastery. Each micro-habit builds the structure of competence, focus, and discipline. Each repetition enforces control. Each measurement confirms progress. Large outcomes are the sum of small actions executed with precision. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. In conclusion, mastery is not produced in bursts. It is produced in micro-habits. It is produced in deliberate, repeatable actions. Begin small. Measure diligently. Track consistently. Repeat without exception. Let momentum build. Let energy accumulate. Let identity reinforce behavior. Systems enforce discipline. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Small wins compound. Next, we will examine why relying on willpower alone is futile and how structured systems make discipline automatic. You will see why effort alone is insufficient. You will learn how to design frameworks that enforce habits without constant mental strain. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 5. Willpower is a myth without structure. Willpower is finite. It depletes with every decision, every temptation, every distraction. You may feel strong in the morning, disciplined at first. By midday, willpower is gone. By evening, it is exhausted. This is the reality. Anyone who relies on it exclusively will fail. That is the first principle. Humans overestimate effort and underestimate systems. Motivation is inconsistent. Discipline based on willpower alone is fragile. The strongest intentions collapse under fatigue, stress, and distraction. You cannot control your environment perfectly. You cannot rely on mental strength indefinitely. The solution is design. The solution is structure. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Athletes demonstrate this principle. Consider a professional runner. She does not rely on inspiration to train. She does not wake and hope she will feel motivated. She has a system. She trains at the same time each day. Meals, sleep, recovery, and workouts are scheduled precisely. Cues enforce action. Routines are fixed. Rewards are built into the process. Improve performance, energy, and results. Willpower is irrelevant. Systems enforce consistency. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. The principle is universal. Weight loss. Begin with a structured meal plan. Exercise at fixed time. Remove cues for bad habits. Add cues for desired habits. Productivity. Schedule work blocks, breaks, and priorities. Energy management. Plan sleep, hydration, and micro-rests. Structure creates discipline automatically. Without structure, effort collapses. Without structure, willpower fails. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Systems replace decision fatigue. Each day, the brain has limited energy for choices. When routines are structured, decisions are automated. You no longer rely on daily negotiation with yourself. The morning ritual does not require permission. The work session does not require debate. Habits execute automatically. Structure is authority. Willpower is optional. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Most people ignore this. They act reactively. They rely on emotion. They wait for feeling capable. They fail repeatedly. Systems enforce behavior independent of mood. They are predictable. They are repeatable. They remove ambiguity. They create reliability. You must prioritize structure over effort. That is non-negotiable. That is precision. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Design begins with mapping. Identify outcomes. Determine necessary actions. Break each action into repeatable steps. Assign cues, routines, and rewards. Track execution. Adjust iteratively. This is engineering, not hope. Each step must be measurable. Each habit must be reinforced. Systems are replicable. Effort is inconsistent. Discipline is automated. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. The environment enforces structure. Remove friction for desired routines. Introduce friction for undesired routines. Place tools, reminders, and prompts where they cannot be missed. Reduce distractions. Automate initiation. Structure the day. Structure the space. Structure the mind. Systems leverage the environment to enforce behavior. Willpower becomes auxiliary. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Measurement is mandatory. Track adherence to the system daily. Record completion, failure, and deviation. Analyze patterns. Identify weaknesses. Adjust the system, not your willpower. Systems adapt. Willpower does not. Systems scale. Willpower plateaus. Systems enforce mastery. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Consistency matters more than intensity. 1 hour of structured work consistently outperforms sporadic bursts of motivated effort. One small, precise action repeated daily compounds. Momentum is established. Neural pathways reinforce the loop. Autopilot shifts from chaos to deliberate execution. Effort is reduced. Systems dominate. Discipline becomes effortless. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Do not confuse structure with rigidity. Systems can be flexible within rules. The framework remains consistent. Core routines are fixed. Execution is predictable. Adaptation occurs only where it does not compromise the loop. Efficiency is maintained. Willpower is minimized. Structure is authority. You do not negotiate with your system. Enforces discipline automatically. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Failure is not personal. It is a signal that the system is flawed. Adjust. Refine. Reinforce. Replace broken routines. Strengthen cues. Reassess rewards. Systems evolve. Willpower does not. Emotion does not. Hope does not. Only structure produces reliable results. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. In conclusion, mastery of behavior is not produced by force of will. It is produced by design. Systems enforce action. Systems automate discipline. Systems remove reliance on emotion and motivation. Identify the outcomes you desire. Design the cues, routines, and rewards. Track, measure, refine. Automate execution. Remove friction. Reinforce consistently. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Don't rely on effort. Build a system. Next, we will examine how to replace destructive loops with purposeful ones. You will learn to identify harmful routines, substitute deliberate alternatives, and engineer a life where every habit serves your goals. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 6. Replace bad loops with powerful ones. Destructive routines dominate most lives. Small, unnoticed habits accumulate silently. They drain energy. They scatter focus. They erode progress. You are surrounded by loops that reinforce mediocrity. If left unchecked, they control your life. That is the first principle. You must identify them. You must intervene. You must replace them. Identify the loop first. Every habit has 3 components: cue, routine, reward. A late-night TV habit, for example, begins with the cue, finishing dinner. The routine, turning on the television. The reward, passive entertainment, dopamine, temporary escape. On the surface, harmless. In reality, it disrupts sleep, drains focus, and delays meaningful work. Recognition is the first step. Awareness is power. Awareness is power. Next, consider replacement. You do not eliminate the reward. You redirect it. Swap the routine. Instead of TV, replace it with learning. Read a book. Watch an instructional video. Review career goals. The cue remains the same. The reward remains comparable. Engagement, satisfaction, mental stimulation. Only the routine changes. The loop now reinforces growth instead of depletion. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Replacement requires precision. Destructive loops are automatic. They resist disruption. You cannot rely on willpower alone. You must create structure. Place books where the remote was. Schedule learning at the same time each night. Remove triggers for the old routine. Make the new loop obvious. Make initiation effortless. Make deviation difficult. Structure enforces compliance. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Micro habits reinforce the new loop. Begin small. Start with 10 minutes of reading or learning. Track completion. Repeat daily. The brain adjusts to the new routine. Neural pathways strengthen. Autopilot begins to follow the new loop automatically. Momentum builds quietly but consistently. Over time, this small change compounds. Energy, focus, and competence increase. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. The same principle applies to other destructive routines. Late night snacking, mindless social media scrolling, procrastination loops. Identify the cue. Determine the reward. Replace the routine. Design the loop intentionally. Make the replacement more rewarding than the original. Reinforce consistency. Measure progress. Adjust as necessary. Systems enforce behavior. Willpower alone does not. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Environment dictates outcomes. Destructive routines thrive where cues are accessible and rewards immediate. Alter the environment. Remove temptation. Introduce positive cues. Visual reminders. Tools for replacement routines. Notifications for productive behavior. Design your surroundings to enforce control. You do not negotiate with your environment. It obeys design. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Reflection is mandatory. Daily or weekly, review all loops. Identify which routines drain energy and which reinforce growth. Adjust. Replace ineffective replacements. Reinforce successful ones. Small loops accumulate. They define your performance, focus, and identity. Destructive loops shrink. Constructive loops dominate. Awareness alone is insufficient. Action is compulsory. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Failure to intervene has consequences. Every ignored loop strengthens autopilot. Energy is wasted. Focus erodes. Opportunities are delayed. Small, unnoticed habits compound into larger patterns of stagnation. You're responsible. You have a choice. Replace destructive routines with purposeful alternatives. Enforce repetition. Track adherence. Measure impact. Systems replace effort. Willpower is auxiliary. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. The principle extends beyond single routines. Entire sequences can be engineered. Morning routines, work sessions, evening habits. Every loop has potential for reinforcement or sabotage. Apply the same logic. Identify cues. Replace routines. Confirm rewards. Repeat consistently. Systems enforce compliance. Micro habits compound. The result is cumulative mastery. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Accountability enhances results. Track new loops. Record completion, outcomes, and consistency. Evaluate deviations. Adjust the system. Reinforce success. Measure impact. The process is deliberate. It is repetitive. It is precise. Autopilot gradually aligns with your design behavior. Momentum is built silently, but irrevocably. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Identity is reinforced through loop replacement. Repeated success strengthens self-perception. You're no longer a passive observer. You are a person who acts deliberately. You are a person who replaces destructive routines with purposeful action. This identity fuels further behavioral change. Each loop mastered compounds into greater competence. Small wins accumulate into unstoppable momentum. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for readiness. Begin now. Identify one destructive loop. Replace it with a purposeful routine. Enforce structure. Repeat daily. Track progress. Measure impact. Adjust as necessary. Autopilot will align with design. Willpower is secondary. Systems are primary. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. In conclusion, destructive routines are invisible but powerful. They accumulate silently. They determine energy, focus, and outcomes. You cannot ignore them. You cannot hope they will disappear. You must identify them, replace them, and reinforce new loops consistently. Systems enforce action. Micro habits compound. Momentum builds. Autopilot becomes deliberate. You are no longer a passenger. You are the designer of your behavior. Swap the loop, change the life. Swap the loop, change the life. Next, we will examine the invisible cost of inaction. You will learn why failing to act is a decision in itself, and how inaction compounds consequences silently. Awareness, loop replacement, and action converge into measurable outcomes. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 7. The invisible cost of inaction. Inaction is not neutral. Doing nothing produces a result. Every choice avoided, every habit ignored, every decision postponed reinforces patterns you do not intend. That is the first principle. You cannot escape consequences by remaining passive. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Most people believe that waiting preserves options, that delaying action avoids mistakes. That is false. Every day, without deliberate effort, strengthens autopilot. Every day of avoiding decisions compounds consequences. Energy is drained. Opportunities are missed. Focus is diluted. Habits you wish to eliminate become entrenched. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Consider the workplace. A person stays in a role that drains energy and limits growth. They hope circumstances will change. They avoid confrontation. They do not plan. They do not act. Every day reinforces mediocrity. Autopilot becomes habit. The cost is cumulative. Lost skills, diminished focus, wasted time. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Relationships operate the same way. A partnership or friendship that depletes energy persists because no boundaries are enforced. The emotional loop strengthens. Behavior remains unchallenged. Energy is silently extracted. Focus is divided. Destructive patterns are confirmed. Inaction has consequences. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. The mechanism is simple. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition, whether conscious or unconscious. If you do not intervene, autopilot governs. Routines are reinforced. Bad loops compound. Every habit ignored becomes more difficult to change. Momentum favors continuation, not disruption. That is the principle. Awareness without action is insufficient. Action is compulsory. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. You have a choice. You can allow routines to persist. You can maintain comfort in familiarity, or you can act deliberately. Identify the loops. Track the cues, routines, and rewards. Replace destructive routines with purposeful alternatives. Apply structure. Repeat consistently. The choice is yours. You have a choice. You have a choice. Micro-actions counter inaction. Start small. Begin with one deliberate step. Send a difficult email. Set a boundary. Complete a small task you've been avoiding. The step compounds. Momentum begins. Autopilot begins to align with intention. Energy is preserved. Focus improves. Habit loops begin to shift. Inaction loses its grip. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Environment enforces consequences of inaction. If nothing is changed, cues for bad behavior remain. Triggers remain unaltered. Rewards for destructive routines persist. Autopilot executes without pause. Energy, focus, and progress decline. Systems are not established. Habits are reinforced passively. That is the hidden cost. That is the silent toll. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Reflection alone is insufficient. Thinking about change is not change. Awareness is the foundation, but action is the vehicle. Track your routines. Identify destructive loops. Replace them with structured alternatives. Measure impact. Adjust. Reinforce. Momentum is built in repeated action, not in contemplation. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Failure to act is a conscious decision. Avoidance is not neutral. Ignoring a habit or problem signals the brain to maintain the status quo. The cost is real: wasted energy, lost opportunities, and entrenched mediocrity. Action is necessary. Deliberate routines are necessary. Structured systems enforce the outcome. Inaction compounds silently. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Systems neutralize the risk of inaction. Fixed routines, deliberate cues, structured rewards, they prevent avoidance. You do not rely on mood, motivation, or energy alone. The system enforces action automatically. Small wins accumulate. Momentum builds. Destructive loops are replaced. Autopilot aligns with intention. Inaction loses its influence. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Do not underestimate the cost. Every postponed decision strengthens entropy. Every avoided habit reinforces destructive loops. Every failure to act compounds into larger inefficiencies. Energy is wasted. Focus is scattered. Discipline erodes. You are accountable. You cannot outsource consequence. You cannot delegate responsibility. You have a choice. You have a choice. Begin immediately. Identify one area where inaction governs. Analyze the loop. Determine the cue, routine, and reward. Replace the routine with a deliberate, purposeful action. Track completion. Adjust as necessary. Repeat daily. Momentum will form. Autopilot will align with design. Energy and focus will improve. Inaction will no longer dominate. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Identity reinforces action. Repeated intervention strengthens self-perception. You become a person who acts deliberately. You become a person who interrupts autopilot. You become a person who enforces structure. This identity compounds. Autopilot begins to serve intentional design rather than unconscious patterns. Inaction loses its power. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. In conclusion, every day of inaction has consequences. Silence is not neutral. Waiting is not harmless. Doing nothing produces results that reinforce destructive patterns. You must act. You must design loops deliberately. You must replace destructive routines with structured alternatives. Awareness without action is insufficient. Action without structure is fragile. Systems enforce momentum. Micro habits compound. Energy, focus, and discipline grow. Inaction is action. Inaction is result. Inaction is cost. Next, we will examine how environmental design becomes your secret weapon. You will learn to structure surroundings that enforce focus, discipline, and deliberate action. Awareness, loop replacement, and micro-action converge into an optimized environment. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 8. Environmental design is your secret weapon. Your environment is not neutral. It dictates action. It shapes attention. It enforces habits. Every object, sound, notification, and placement in your surroundings either supports discipline or undermines it. Most people ignore this fact. They believe willpower alone will prevail. They are mistaken. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. The principle is simple. Behavior follows cues. Cues exist in the environment. Visual cues, auditory cues, spatial cues. Every signal primes a response. A cluttered desk primes distraction. A phone on the table primes scrolling. An open email tab primes reactive work. Each signal triggers a routine. Each routine reinforces a pattern. Your environment either strengthens autopilot or enforces deliberate action. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Consider a workspace. A person wants focus but leaves their phone visible. Notifications distract. Emails pop up. Social media alerts compete for attention. Their brain reacts automatically. Willpower fails. Energy drains. Focus is lost. Productivity is compromised. Rearrange the environment. Remove the phone from the desk. Close unnecessary tabs. Place tools and resources for work within easy reach. The cues now prime action aligned with purpose. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Environmental design applies to personal growth as well. Books you wish to read. Place them where you will see them daily. Journals, notebooks, and planners. Keep them accessible. Place reminders for habits where you cannot ignore them. Rewards, too, can be environmental. Completed tasks in view reinforce momentum. Progress is visible. Motivation is unnecessary. Systems enforce compliance. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Destructive routines thrive in poorly designed surroundings. Snacks on the counter prime overeating. Open social media apps prime distraction. Cues trigger undesired routines automatically. The cost is silent. Energy is lost. Focus diminishes. Autopilot dominates. To counter this, remove triggers. Introduce friction for undesired routines. Make access inconvenient. Make the alternative behavior obvious. Structure enforces action. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Micro adjustments matter. Small changes compound into lasting habits. Move the phone across the room. Keep water visible to reinforce hydration. Use timers for focused work sessions. Arrange exercise equipment for immediate access. Organize spaces to remove friction for positive routines. Each adjustment subtly primes deliberate behavior. Each adjustment reduces reliance on willpower. Each adjustment compounds results. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Environment governs energy as well. Clutter, noise, and disorganization drain mental resources. Clear spaces allow focus to flow. Intentional lighting, seating, and layout reduce friction for productive routines. Energy is preserved. Discipline is reinforced. Momentum is natural. Systems execute without constant oversight. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Accountability is enhanced through environmental design. Visual trackers, checklists, and reminders reinforce completion. Objects in view confirm progress. Micro-habits accumulate. Repetition becomes automatic. Autopilot serves intention. Systems dominate effort. Willpower is auxiliary. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Consider digital spaces. Your phone, apps, notifications, and desktop can reinforce distraction or productivity. Remove apps that trigger undesired behavior. Disable notifications. Reorganize the home screen to prioritize productive tools. Schedule automated reminders for intentional habits. Design digital cues to enforce focus, energy, and progress. Systems act silently. Discipline becomes effortless. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Reflection enhances environmental design. Weekly, review your surroundings. Identify cues that prime destructive behavior. Identify cues that reinforce productive routines. Adjust, rearrange, and refine. Small improvements compound over time. Environments are not static. They are tools. They are allies. They enforce action. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Failure to design your environment is a silent choice. Ignoring cues allows autopilot to dominate. Energy drains. Momentum stalls. Habits reinforce themselves without deliberation. Discipline relies entirely on willpower. This is fragile. This is inefficient. You have the power to intervene. Design deliberately. Structure consistently. Remove friction. Enforce productive cues. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Identity is reinforced through structured surroundings. Repetition in a controlled environment strengthens self-perception. You become a person who acts deliberately. You become a person who enforces momentum. Autopilot aligns with intentional design. Micro-habits compound. Momentum builds. Energy is preserved. Focus sharpens. Systems enforce mastery. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. In conclusion, your surroundings are a silent but powerful driver of action. Every cue matters. Every placement matters. Every notification, object, and habit trigger contributes to either autopilot or deliberate action. Willpower alone is insufficient. Structure and design enforce consistency. Small adjustments compound into mastery. Autopilot becomes your ally. Your environment shapes your behavior. Your environment shapes your life. Next, we will examine how to optimize your daily routines for maximum leverage. You will learn how to combine habit loops, micro wins, and environmental design into a seamless, unstoppable system. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 9. The Discipline of Daily Reflection. Reflection is not optional. It is necessary. Without it, autopilot dominates. Awareness without review is incomplete. Habits persist unnoticed. Energy is wasted. Focus is scattered. Discipline erodes silently. To gain control, you must review your actions deliberately. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Daily reflection is brief but consistent. 10 minutes is sufficient. Longer sessions are unnecessary and often counterproductive. The goal is clarity, measurement, and adjustment. Track actions, identify triggers, and evaluate outcomes. Every habit is an opportunity for feedback. Awareness strengthens control. Awareness informs intervention. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Start by reviewing cues. Every habit begins with a signal. Did you recognize it? Did it trigger a desired or undesired routine? Map each cue to its corresponding behavior and reward. Write down. Externalize observation. The mind remembers patterns when recorded. The brain reinforces clarity. Action becomes measurable. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Next, examine routines. Did you act intentionally or on autopilot? Did the routines serve your goals or undermine them? Identify deviations. Determine why they occurred. Emotional triggers, environmental cues, or fatigue often explain lapses. Document them. Accept reality without judgment. Reflection is not critique. It is engineering. Each insight informs design. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Evaluate rewards. Did the outcome reinforce productive behavior? Did it encourage destructive loops? Understand the consequence of every action. If the reward supports your goals, reinforce the loop. If it reinforces bad habits, redesign the routine. Rewards are confirmations. They solidify loops. They must be monitored deliberately. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Journaling enhances reflection. Write every habit, cue, routine, and reward. Note emotional states, energy levels, and context. This transforms passive awareness into actionable intelligence. Patterns emerge. Interventions become clear. Systems improve. Micro-habits accumulate. Momentum is reinforced. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflection is not theoretical. It produces measurable outcomes. Consider emotional triggers. Journaling reveals patterns. Anxiety triggers scrolling, boredom triggers snacking, stress triggers procrastination. Once identified, loops can be redesigned. Replace destructive routines with purposeful ones. Adjust environmental cues. Apply micro-habits. Track compliance. Momentum builds. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Small adjustments compound. Each day of reflection informs the next. One micro-change leads to another. Over weeks, patterns shift. Autopilot aligns with deliberate design. Energy is preserved. Focus improves. Habits reinforce goals rather than detract from them. Repetition of reflection ensures continuous optimization. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. The system is self-reinforcing. Daily reflection strengthens awareness. Awareness informs action. Action reinforces habits. Habits define outcomes. Outcomes confirm the process. Momentum accumulates silently but inexorably. 10 minutes of deliberate review outweigh hours of unstructured effort. Consistency is the mechanism. Repetition is the engine. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Failure to reflect has a silent cost. Without feedback, destructive loops persist. Autopilot strengthens. Energy and focus diminish. Habits operate unchecked. Momentum halts. Micro-habits decay. Willpower alone cannot compensate. Systems are ineffective without review. Reflection is the essential lever. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Daily reflection is a discipline, not a suggestion. It must be practiced without exception. 10 minutes each day, at a consistent time, yields compounding benefits. Morning or evening works. Choose a moment when your mind can assess the day objectively. Journaling is optional but recommended. Externalizing insights strengthens retention. Patterns emerge more clearly. Decisions improve. Results multiply. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Identity is reinforced through reflection. You become a person who observes intentionally. You become a person who intervenes deliberately. You become a person who optimizes systems rather than relying on luck or willpower. Autopilot begins to serve your design. Micro-habits align with intention. Momentum grows. Energy is preserved. Focus sharpens. Discipline becomes natural. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. In conclusion, reflection is a multiplier of control. Awareness alone is incomplete. Action alone is unsustainable. Feedback is the missing link. 10 minutes each day transforms habits into systems. Patterns are identified. Loops are adjusted. Rewards are reinforced or redirected. Micro-habits compound. Autopilot aligns with intention. Energy, focus, and discipline grow exponentially. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Reflect, adjust, repeat. Next, we will examine how to integrate all principles, triggers, loops, micro-wins, environmental design, and reflection into an unstoppable system of mastery. You will learn how to combine each element into a seamless, deliberate framework. That is the next step. That is the necessary step. Chapter 10. Master the loop, master your life. Every behavior follows a loop. Cue, routine, reward. Each loop reinforces patterns. Each loop shapes outcomes. Every action in your day is governed by this structure, whether you notice it or not. Most people remain passive. They allow autopilot to dominate. They react to triggers instead of designing them. That is a choice. You do not need to make it. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Conscious mastery begins with awareness. Identify every cue that drives behavior. Map routines that follow. Observe rewards that reinforce loops. Awareness alone is insufficient. Observation must lead to intervention. Replace destructive routines with purposeful alternatives. Introduce structured micro-habits. Leverage environmental cues. Reinforce rewards intentionally. Repeat consistently. Autopilot gradually aligns with your design. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Consider a life transformed by deliberate loop design. Sleep is engineered. The cue is bedtime. The routine, preparing for rest, limiting screens, quieting the environment. The reward, deep, restorative sleep. Work is structured. The cue, morning start. The routine, focus blocks, prioritize tasks, intentional breaks. The reward, productivity, progress, momentum. Learning is automated. The cue, daily review. The routine, journaling, reading, skill practice. The reward, competence, clarity, growth. Each loop supports the next. Each loop compounds. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Micro wins accumulate. Small habits repeated consistently compound into mastery. One action triggers another. One improvement creates momentum. Over time, the cumulative effect is exponential. Energy is preserved. Focus sharpens. Willpower becomes auxiliary. Systems dominate behavior. Autopilot serves intention. Momentum builds quietly but powerfully. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Environmental design reinforces mastery. Place cues strategically. Remove triggers for destructive routines. Make desired routines effortless to initiate. Design spaces that support deliberate action. Digital tools, workspace setup, reminders, all serve as invisible enforcers of discipline. The system becomes autonomous. You do not rely on motivation. You do not negotiate with emotion. You do not depend on fleeting willpower. The loop enforces results. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Daily reflection completes the system. Observe results. Track progress. Adjust routines. Optimize cues. Reinforce rewards. 10 minutes of consistent review multiplies awareness and control. Micro adjustments compound. Weak loops are strengthened or replaced. Momentum accelerates. Energy, focus, and outcomes align with intention. Systems become predictable. Discipline becomes automatic. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Failure to master loops has a cost. Autopilot governs. Energy is wasted. Habits reinforce mediocrity. Productivity stalls. Opportunities are lost. Life is dictated by triggers outside your control. Each day repeats itself. Outcomes remain random. You do not need permission to act. You do not need perfect motivation. You need design. You need structure. You need deliberate loops. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Integration is essential. Triggers, routines, rewards, micro wins, environmental design, reflection, all elements form a single framework. Each component reinforces the others. Cues prime routines. Routines generate micro wins. Micro wins compound. Environment enforces the loops. Reflection ensures optimization. Momentum builds. Outcomes are predictable. Discipline becomes habitual. Autopilot serves mastery. You become the architect of your life. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Consider the transformation possible with mastery. A person redesigns sleep, work, and learning loops. They wake rested, focused, productive. Learning is consistent. Energy is preserved. Goals are achieved. Autopilot enforces results, not distraction. Momentum is unavoidable. Life becomes deliberate. Outcomes compound. Micro habits reinforce identity. Discipline is automatic. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. The principle is universal. Every habit, every behavior, every choice can be engineered. Nothing occurs by accident. You may allow destructive loops to dominate or intentionally design routines that serve your objectives. Systems enforce behavior. Structure replaces effort. Autopilot aligns with intention. Small actions compound. Momentum becomes unstoppable. You have a choice. You have a choice. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Begin immediately. Identify the first loop to master. Observe a cue. Design the routine. Reinforce the reward. Repeat consistently. Adjust through reflection. Optimize your environment. Track progress. Micro wins accumulate. Autopilot aligns with your design. Repeat daily. Each loop mastered compounds results across the day, the week, the month, the year. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. In conclusion, mastery is not motivation. It is design, not luck. It is structure, not chance. Awareness, loops, micro wins, environment, reflection, all elements converge into deliberate systems. Every habit can be engineered. Every routine can be optimized. Every outcome can be influenced. Momentum compounds. Energy is preserved. Focus sharpens. Discipline becomes inevitable. You're no longer a passenger. You're the architect of your life. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. If you want more guidance in mastering your habits and designing systems that enforce discipline automatically, subscribe to this channel. Join the community of listeners committed to deliberate, structured self-mastery. Reinforce your journey. Access more strategies, systems, and insights. Control the loop, control the day. Control the loop, control the life. Subscribe now and continue your transformation.